Revenge for betrayal. The story of my rebirth. He betrayed me, and I became stronger than ever. My story isn't about tears and suffering, but about how revenge for betrayal turned into my true rebirth. Ready to find out how new life can be born from pain? Then listen on. I always considered myself a woman who knew what she wanted. My life was built brick by brick. A successful career, a cozy apartment in the city center, loyal friends, and of course my husband, Richard. We met at a party with mutual friends, and from that evening I was sure it was fate. His smile, confidence, ability to listen, everything about him seemed perfect. I didn't notice a single shadow of doubt when he proposed to me. We had been together for 5 years, and I believed I knew him better than anyone. But one day everything changed. It was an ordinary evening. I came home a little earlier than usual and found Richard in the living room. He was nervously scrolling through his phone, and when he saw me, he quickly put it in his pocket. I didn't think much of it, maybe it was work stuff. But something in his eyes made me uneasy. I felt a sense of anxiety growing inside, but I pushed it away. The next day, I noticed that Richard started staying late at work more often. His phone was always with him now, even when he took a shower. He became distracted, forgot about our plans, and answered my questions evasively. I tried to convince myself it was just stress, but you can't fool a woman's intuition. Everything was decided one evening when I accidentally saw a message on his phone. "Thank you for last night, you were amazing." I felt the ground slip from under my feet. My heart was pounding, my hands were shaking. I couldn't believe this was happening to me. I, the one who always kept everything under control, had been deceived. I didn't make a scene. No, I decided to act differently. I wanted to know the whole truth down to the last detail. I started watching Richard, checking his messages, tracking his meetings. I even installed a tracking app on his phone. Every day I uncovered more and more details of his double life. It turned out he had not one, but 2 lovers. One was a colleague at work, the other, a fitness trainer from the gym he supposedly went to in the evenings. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I just froze inside, as if someone had turned off all my emotions. But instead of pain, determination came. I wasn't going to be a victim. I decided that Richard would remember this lesson for the rest of his life. I started planning my revenge. Everything had to be perfect. Not a single extra detail, not a single accidental mistake. I studied his schedule, habits, weaknesses. I knew he couldn't resist a beautiful woman who suddenly showed interest in him. I created a fake social media account, invented the persona of a mysterious stranger who started flirting with him. As expected, Richard quickly fell for the bait. At the same time, I was gathering evidence of his affairs. Screenshots of messages, photos, audio recordings of conversations. I knew I would need all of this to strike at the most unexpected moment. I didn't just want to leave. I wanted him to feel exactly what I had felt. The day I was ready, I invited Richard to dinner. I cooked his favorite dish, wore the very dress he had proposed to me in. All evening I was the perfect wife. Smiling, joking, listening to his stories about work. He relaxed, not suspecting that this was the calm before the storm. When dinner was over, I took out the folder with the evidence and put it in front of him on the table. His face turned pale, his hands shook. I looked him in the eyes and spoke calmly, without hysteria or tears. I told him everything I knew and showed him how easily he had fallen into my trap. I watched his world collapse, how he tried to find excuses, but I didn't give him a single chance. I left the house that same night, leaving him only a note. "You've lost me forever." But that was only the first part of my revenge. I knew the most interesting part was still ahead. I rented a small apartment on the other side of the city. The first days after the breakup were strange. The silence I wasn't used to, and the freedom that at first seemed frightening. But I didn't let myself fall apart. I knew I had a goal ahead, to finish what I had started. Richard tried to contact me. He called, sent long messages, begged for forgiveness, promised to fix everything. I didn't answer. I watched him from afar like a character in someone else's movie. His life began to fall apart. His colleagues found out about his affair with the coworker, and it led to a workplace investigation. I didn't do anything directly, just anonymously sent HR screenshots of their messages. The rest was handled by corporate ethics. The second lover, the fitness trainer, quickly realized Richard wasn't who he claimed to be. I wrote to her myself, attaching proof of his lies. She was furious and confronted him right in the gym. I found out about it from her friends' stories. It's a small world, and social networks make it even smaller. I didn't feel any gloating. I just watched as the man who betrayed me got what he deserved. But I didn't stop there. I knew Richard valued his reputation. He always wanted to seem perfect, at work, among friends, even in the family. I decided his mask had to come off completely. I arranged a meeting with his parents. We had always had a good relationship, and they considered me the perfect daughter-in-law. I told them the truth calmly without accusations. I showed them the evidence so there would be no doubt. Their reaction was predictable. Disappointment, shame, anger at their son. I knew this would be the most painful blow for Richard. After that, I felt relief. I had done everything I could. I didn't just leave. I regained my dignity and showed that I couldn't be treated like an object. I started a new life, signed up for courses I had long postponed, spent more time with friends, traveled. I learned to enjoy the little things again. Richard disappeared from my life as suddenly as he had appeared. Sometimes I heard about him from mutual acquaintances. He tried to start over, but it didn't work out. His reputation was ruined and trust lost forever. I don't regret anything. This story made me stronger. I realized that revenge isn't always evil. Sometimes it's a way to reclaim yourself. Months passed. I no longer woke up at night from resentment or caught myself wanting to go back to the past. My life was filled with new meaning. I changed jobs, made new friends, allowed myself things I had only dreamed of before. But sometimes when I was alone, I wondered, what's next? The revenge was complete, but ahead was emptiness. One evening, Elizabeth, my close friend, called me. She invited me to a girls' night out. I didn't want to go, but Elizabeth insisted. You need to relax and just have fun. I agreed, not suspecting that this evening would change my life. The bar was noisy and fun. The girls laughed, shared their stories and secrets. I listened and suddenly realized, almost everyone had their own pain, their own betrayed love, their own revenge. We laughed at men's foolishness, supported each other, and I felt that I wasn't alone. That evening I met Adam. He was nothing like Richard, calm, attentive, with a gentle irony in his voice. We started talking, and for the first time in a long while I felt like an interesting woman, not a victim. Adam didn't ask unnecessary questions, didn't pry, he was just there. We exchanged numbers and I went home with a light smile. The next day I got a message from him. Thank you for the evening. You're amazing. I stared at the screen for a long time, not knowing what to reply. Inside me, fear and hope were fighting. I was afraid to trust again, to be deceived again. But something told me, not all men are the same. I decided to give myself a chance. We started seeing each other, at first just as friends. I told him about my hobbies, he told me about his travels. We walked in parks, watched movies, argued about books. I was learning to trust step by step, day by day. One day Adam asked me, have you ever taken revenge on someone? I smiled and replied, yes, and it was the best thing I ever did for myself. He didn't ask anymore, just took my hand. So week after week I kept seeing Adam. Everything was easy and natural between us. We didn't rush, didn't build illusions, just enjoyed every moment. For the first time in a long time, I allowed myself to be myself, without fear of being judged or betrayed. Adam was patient, he didn't rush me to open up, but he was always there when I wanted to talk. One day, after several months of seeing each other, I got an unexpected message. It was Richard. Seeing his name on the screen gave me a strange feeling. Not pain, not anger, but rather mild surprise. He wrote briefly, "Forgive me. I understand everything now. I hope you're happy." I looked at those words for a long time, remembering everything that had happened between us. I didn't reply. I no longer needed his forgiveness or explanations. I had finally let go of the past. That same evening, I told Adam my whole story. I spoke calmly without tears or reproach, simply sharing what had become a part of me. He listened attentively, without interrupting. When I finished, he said, "You're strong. I'm proud of you." And I felt that I truly had become stronger. From that moment, I began to build my life anew. I discovered new hobbies. I signed up for photography classes, started traveling more, even tried volunteering. I met new people, learned to trust and make friends again. My life was filled with bright colors and I no longer looked back. One day I met Elizabeth, the very friend who had supported me in a difficult moment. We sat in a cozy cafe, drank coffee, and laughed about old stories. Elizabeth said, "You've changed. You've become different, real." I smiled and realized she was right. Revenge for betrayal didn't destroy me. On the contrary, it helped me find myself. I was no longer afraid to be alone, to trust, or to live. I knew that only the best was ahead because now I was choosing my own path. Time passed and I felt more and more how my life was changing. I became more confident, calmer, and learned to enjoy the simple things. Adam was by my side, but he wasn't the center of my world. Now I was the center of my own world. It was a new, amazing feeling. To be happy not because of someone else, but because of myself. One day at work, I was offered to take part in a major project. It was a chance to prove myself, to reach a new level. I agreed, although before I would have been afraid of the responsibility. There were many new people on the team, and among them was Chloe, young, ambitious, with a spark in her eyes. We quickly found common ground, and soon became not only colleagues but friends. One evening, when we stayed late at the office, Chloe suddenly confessed that she was going through a betrayal. Her boyfriend was seeing someone else, and she didn't know how to go on. I saw myself in her, the old me, lost and hurt. I told Chloe my story, hiding neither the pain nor the revenge, nor how it changed me. She listened, sometimes cried, sometimes laughed, and then said, "Thank you. Now I know that you can get through anything." That conversation was a revelation for me. I realized that my experience could help others. I started a blog where I began sharing my thoughts, stories, and advice. Unexpectedly, I started receiving letters from women who were going through similar trials. They thanked me for my honesty, for my support, for not being afraid to talk about pain and how to overcome it. My life gained new meaning. I was no longer a victim, not just a woman who had been cheated on. I became an example for others, strong and free. Adam supported me in everything, rejoiced in my successes, and inspired me to take new steps. My blog quickly gained popularity. Women wrote to me from all over the country, shared their stories, asked for advice or just support. I replied to every letter, trying to be honest and sincere. Sometimes it seemed to me that I had become part of a large women's community, where each of us was not just a listener, but a true friend. One day, I received a message from a girl named Mia. Her story was similar to mine. Betrayal, deceit, the feeling that the ground was slipping from under her feet. But there was something special in her letter. Not just pain, but also a desire to fight. We met in a small cafe, and I saw in front of me a fragile but very strong girl. We talked for hours and I realized, by helping others, I was healing myself. Soon I decided to organize a meeting for my blog's subscribers. We rented a cozy hall, ordered tea and sweets, and just talked about life, about pain, about how important it is to support each other. That evening, for the first time, I felt truly needed. The women laughed, cried, hugged, and shared their stories. I realized, together we are stronger. Adam supported me in everything. He helped organize the meetings, sometimes gave short talks about relationship psychology, His calmness and kindness became my support. I was no longer afraid of the future. I knew I could handle any difficulties. One evening, as Adam and I were walking along the embankment, he suddenly stopped and looked into my eyes. "You know," he said, "I've always admired your strength. You've changed not only your own life, but the lives of many other women. I'm proud of you." His words were simple but so warm and sincere. I realized that the most important thing is not to get stuck in the past, but to move forward, helping others and discovering new horizons for yourself. With each passing day, I felt more and more that I had found my calling. My blog turned into a real support community, and the meetings became regular. We discussed not only betrayals and infidelity, but also new relationships, self-esteem, careers, and dreams. Women shared their successes, supported each other, and I saw how their eyes changed. Confidence and light appeared in them. One day, the editorial office of a popular women's magazine contacted me with an offer to write a column about women's strength and overcoming pain. I agreed, although I used to be afraid of publicity. My first article received a huge response. Not only women wrote to me, but also men who wanted to understand how not to repeat the mistakes of the past. Soon I was invited to speak at a conference on women's leadership. I was nervous, but I knew I had to tell my story. On stage, I spoke honestly about pain, about revenge, about how important it is not to get stuck in resentment but to move on. After the speech, dozens of women came up to me, thanked me for my candor, and shared their stories. I realized my journey was just beginning. In my personal life, everything was harmonious too. Adam and I became closer, but didn't lose ourselves in the relationship. We supported each other, celebrated successes together, and faced difficulties together. I was no longer afraid to trust because I knew now I could protect myself. Soon Adam proposed to me. It was simple and sincere. No pomp, no unnecessary words. He said, "I want to be with you no matter what. You are my choice." I agreed, but this time not out of fear of being alone, but because I was ready for a new chapter. We had a small wedding with only our closest friends and family. I looked at Adam and realized, now I know how to truly love, not out of dependence but out of freedom. My friends, many of whom had gone through pain and betrayal, were there. We laughed, remembered the past, and made plans for the future. Since Adam and I got married, I have felt truly happy. Everything was calm, harmonious, even almost too perfect. But as often happens, it's in such moments that a certain anxiety creeps in, as if happiness is too fragile to be real. It all started with little things. Adam started staying late at work more often, sometimes didn't answer my calls, and his phone was more and more often on silent mode. I caught myself listening to his tone, searching for hidden meaning in his words, just like I once did with Richard. I was angry at myself for these suspicions, but I couldn't stop them. One evening, when I came home earlier than usual, I heard Adam talking on the phone in another room. His voice was quiet, almost a whisper, and I caught only fragments. "Yes, everything is going according to plan. No, she doesn't suspect anything." When he heard my footsteps, he quickly said goodbye and came out to me with a smile, as if nothing had happened. "You're home early," he said, kissing me on the cheek. "How was your day?" I tried to smile, but inside everything tightened. I remembered how Richard used to hide his phone, how I didn't want to believe the obvious back then. Could it really be happening again? I couldn't believe Adam was capable of betrayal, but the anxiety grew every day. The following weeks became a real test for me. Adam became even more distracted, sometimes forgot our plans, and once even mixed up the date of my important presentation. I tried to convince myself it was just fatigue, but the doubts wouldn't let go. I started noticing strange things. A new scent of perfume on his shirt, a woman's hair clip in the car that I definitely hadn't left there. I tried to ask directly, but Adam dodged the questions, joked, or just hugged me as if trying to make up for something. At some point I couldn't take it anymore and decided to check his phone. I knew it was wrong, but fear was stronger. I didn't find anything suspicious in his messages, but I noticed he often chatted with someone named Grace. Their conversations were short but regular. I didn't know who she was, and that only made my anxiety worse. I became nervous, irritable, snapping over little things. Adam noticed the changes but blamed it on tiredness. I withdrew more and more, remembering the past and fearing I would be deceived again. One evening, when Adam was later than usual, I couldn't stand it and called him. He didn't answer. I called again, still silence. The worst thoughts started racing through my mind. I threw on my coat and went outside, not knowing where I was going. I just walked, trying to calm the trembling in my hands. At that moment, Elizabeth called me. "Where are you?" she asked anxiously. "Adam is looking for you, he's worried." "I just went out for a walk," I lied, feeling tears rising in my throat. "Please go home," Elizabeth said gently. "Everything is fine, really." I didn't understand what was happening, but decided to listen. When I returned, the apartment was dark. I turned on the light and froze. The whole living room was decorated with candles and flowers. Photos from our life hung on the walls, and on the table was a huge cake with the words, "You are my inspiration." Adam came out of the kitchen with a sheepish smile. "Sorry I made you worry," he said. "I wanted to surprise you. Today is exactly 1 year since the day we first met. I wanted this evening to be special." I stood in the middle of the room, unable to say a word. All my fears, suspicions, anxieties, it was all for nothing. Adam came up to me, hugged me, and I finally allowed myself to cry, from relief, from happiness, from love. "I've been planning this for weeks," he admitted. "Grace is the pastry chef. She helped me with the cake. And the hair clip in the car is Elizabeth's. She helped me decorate the apartment. I wanted you to feel how much I love you." I laughed and cried at the same time, feeling all the accumulated fear melt away. After that evening, I couldn't sleep for a long time. The events of the past weeks kept spinning in my head. My suspicions, anxieties, tears, and now relief and joy. I lay next to Adam, listened to his steady breathing, and thought about how easy it is to fall into the trap of the past if you don't learn to trust. The next morning, I woke up earlier than usual. Adam was still asleep, and I quietly went to the kitchen to make breakfast. On the table was a note, "Don't rush anywhere today. I have another surprise for you." I smiled, now every little thing seemed special. Soon Adam woke up and, as if nothing had happened, suggested we take a walk in the park. We walked along the alleys, holding hands, and I felt the lightness between us return, the one that had disappeared in recent weeks. Adam was calm, joked, talked about work, and I caught myself thinking that for the first time in a long time, I wasn't looking for a catch in his words. "You were mad at me, weren't you?" he suddenly asked, stopping by a bench. I nodded, not hiding the truth. "I was afraid you were hiding something." I became suspicious again like before. "I'm sorry." Adam took my hands. "I understand. You have the right to your fears. But I want you to know, I will never betray you. If something is wrong, I'll be the first to tell you. And now," he smiled, "I have something else for you." He took a small envelope out of his pocket. Inside was a train ticket and a card. "Pack your suitcase. Tomorrow we're going to the place where our story began." I laughed. It was the city where we met at Elizabeth's bachelorette party. Adam had thought of everything. The hotel excursions, even dinner at the very cafe where we first talked for hours. I felt my heart fill with gratitude and love. The whole day we spent in anticipation of the trip. I packed, Adam booked the table, we remembered the details of our first meeting together. In the evening, I called Elizabeth and told her about the surprise. She laughed. "See, not all men are the same." The next day we set off on our journey. The trip was easy. We chatted, looked out the window, made plans. In that city, everything seemed both familiar and new. We walked the streets, took photos, laughed like teenagers. In the evening, Adam took me to that very cafe. There was already a table set, candles, flowers. He got down on one knee and said, I know you've been through a lot. I know you've been hurt and that you've learned to be strong. But now I want you to allow yourself to just be happy. With me. I couldn't hold back my tears. They were tears of happiness, relief, gratitude. I realized that I could trust, could love, could be myself. That night I fell asleep in his arms, for the first time in a long time, not thinking about the past. I knew. Now I had a present in which I could truly be happy. The next morning we woke up in our hotel room, filled with soft light and the aroma of freshly brewed coffee. Adam was already awake. He stood by the window, gazing thoughtfully at the city that had become our starting point. I walked up behind him, hugged him, and he turned to me with a smile. "How are you feeling?" he asked. "Happy," I answered honestly, and a little silly for my suspicions. "Don't blame yourself," Adam said gently. "You're just protecting yourself. I understand that. But I want you to know, I'm always on your side." We had breakfast at a small cafe on the corner, where the waitress recognized us and exclaimed happily, "You're together again. It's so nice to see you." I smiled. Everything in this city was filled with memories, but now they were only bright ones. All day we walked along familiar streets, visited bookstores, took photos by old lanterns, laughed about how much we had changed over time. Adam was attentive and caring, and I felt the last shadow of mistrust between us disappear. At one point we stopped at the bridge where we had once talked for hours. Adam took a small box out of his backpack. "I wanted to give you this back then, but I didn't dare," he said, opening the box. Inside was a silver bracelet engraved with, "You are my inspiration." I couldn't hold back my tears. This gesture was simple, but it meant everything. Care, love, respect for my feelings. Adam put the bracelet on my wrist and quietly said, "I want you to always remember, you are not alone. I'm here. And if you ever feel scared again, just tell me." I nodded, unable to speak. In that moment I realized I could trust not only Adam but myself as well. I was no longer the woman who lived in fear of being betrayed. I had become a woman who knew how to love and be loved. That evening we returned to the hotel, tired but happy. I lay in bed, listening to Adam talk about his dreams, and thought about how important it is sometimes to allow yourself to be vulnerable. Only then can you truly feel happiness. Before falling asleep, Adam hugged me and whispered, "Thank you for trusting me. I promise I'll always do everything to make you feel loved and protected." I smiled and, as I drifted off, thought, this is true happiness. Not perfect, not cloudless, but mine. And I'm ready to move forward with him, no matter what. A year passed since that unforgettable surprise Adam had arranged for me. So much had changed, both in me and around me. My blog had grown into a large women's community. I published a book, and meetings with my subscribers became regular and warm. I was no longer afraid of the past, no longer lived in anticipation of disappointment, but learned to enjoy each day. That evening I stood in front of the mirror, getting ready for an important event, the presentation of my book. Adam came into the room, hugged me from behind, and quietly asked, "Are you ready?" I smiled at him in the reflection. Now I'm always ready. There were many people in the hall, friends, subscribers, women who had once written me letters, and even those who just came to support me. I walked onto the stage and suddenly saw Richard in the front row. He looked at me with a gentle sadness, but there was no reproach or regret in his eyes, only respect, and it seemed pride for me. I began to speak about pain, about betrayal, about how important it is not to get stuck in the past, but to move forward. I told my story honestly, hiding neither my weaknesses nor my mistakes. The hall was quiet, some people cried, some smiled. I saw how my words resonated in their hearts. At the end of my speech I said, "The most important thing I've learned over these years is to forgive yourself, others, life. Only by forgiving can you truly become free and happy, and only then is there room for real love." After the presentation, Richard came up to me. He reached out his hand and quietly said, Thank you. You've become stronger than ever. I'm happy for you. I smiled, letting him go for good, and felt a sense of lightness and peace inside. Adam came over, hugged me, and I realized all that had been pain, revenge, fears was behind me. Now I had a life I had chosen myself. I was no longer a victim, not an avenger, not a betrayed woman. I was happy, free, and loved. This story is a reminder that betrayal always hurts. It destroys trust, makes you doubt yourself and others, and leaves deep wounds. But it's important to remember, betrayal is not the end of life and not a sentence. It's a trial you can go through to become stronger, wiser, and freer. Revenge often seems like the only way to restore justice and regain your dignity. But true victory is not in causing pain in return, but in not letting someone else's betrayal destroy you. Revenge may bring temporary relief, but only forgiveness and acceptance of yourself open the way to real happiness. Each of us chooses our own path. Some leave, some forgive, some start over. The main thing is not to lose yourself, not to let the past control your future, and to remember that you are worthy of love and respect. And how do you feel about betrayal and revenge? Have you ever faced something similar in your life? How did you cope with the pain, and what helped you move forward? Be sure to share your thoughts in the comments. Your experience may support others. If you enjoyed this story, please like and subscribe to the channel. There are many more honest and inspiring stories about life, love, and women's strength ahead.